Welcome, y'all. It's Wes with DIY Food Plot Pro. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's episode, we are talking about deer hunting food plots and soil building. Some folks see these as two different things. Some folks want all this combined into one. And today we are going to go through some of the steps that we can do to help our soil, to make it more fertile, to make it a better of a growing environment for those whitetails where they can express more of their true potential. DIY Food Plot Pro is sponsored by Aircrow LLC, the Plot Protector Pro. Keep whitetails and other animals out of your food plots with the Plot Protector Pro. My name is Wes. I run the channel DIY Food Plot Pro. I've got a Bachelor of Science in Agronomy. I farm for a living, and I've got a 2,900 acre whitetail deer hunting outfitter in Western Kentucky where we are not allowed to bait or put minerals out. So we rely heavily on these food plots that I produce on the channel to hunt and harvest the whitetails that we're blessed to hunt here in Western Kentucky. Soil building has turned into an extremely popular thing right now. You don't have to look very far to see many articles wrote about soil building, regenerative ag, all these different processes that folks are trying to do to make their soil better, make the plants that are growing in the soil more nutritious, less fertilizer, less chemicals. We are going to talk about some of the things that we can do to further enhance our soil, some of the processes that we do that lower our soil quality. Obviously, the very first thing that we're going to talk about when we start talking about soil is our natural soil fertility and our natural pH. This is where the entire soil building process has to start, okay? If you are running on soils that are in the mid-4s, those nutrients that may or may not be in the soil are completely locked up, okay? So no matter what anybody tells you, this entire process starts with a correct soil pH and fertility ranges in the adequate range to raise the food plots that you want to raise. Don't let anyone tell you that you can switch to this food plot and your soil pH is going to soar to 7.0. It's not going to happen. I wished it was that easy, but it's not. As we transition to different food plots and we stop using those highly acidic fertilizers, certainly our pH is going to try to return to a normal level for your soil. If you have a 5.0 pH, just because you start using this process does not mean you are going to go to a 7.0. It's not going to happen. Don't let anybody tell you that it's going to. So the first step in this process is getting the soil pH up to where we can adequately supply those plants with the amount of nutrients that are needed. So what happens is the soil pH drops, a lot of the nutrients, macros and micronutrients, become unavailable to that plant, okay? So that's why we choose somewhere between 6.5 and 7, is because that is over the entire range of all the macros and all the micronutrients. That is where most all of them are able to be uptook in the highest amount. So that's why we're shooting for that neutral range of 6.5 to 7, okay? Any lower, we start limiting some nutrients. Any higher, we start limiting some nutrients. So we try to stay right there in the center. Another thing that we have to do, and we're starting this process of regenerative ag, is we have to start with at least adequate levels of soil fertility, okay? You can't start this process if your P and your K are down to 2 pounds per acre. I have seen soil tests that are that low, so it's not an exaggeration. There are soils out there that have very low levels of P and K. The plants are actually starving because they can't get the macronutrients that they need in those large quantities to be able to grow. So the first two things that we must do when we're starting any food plot, whether we're starting soil building or food plot in general, soil pH and soil fertility. That's where it all starts. Okay, now for soil building, what are we looking at? For soil building, we want no tillage. Underneath our feet here, we have what they call soil structure. Every time we bring a tiller, a disc, a chisel, a brake and plow, anything like that, we are damaging or destroying the soil structure. We don't want that. We want a very good soil structure with a lot of porosity. So porosity, there are holes that are natural in the soil for drainage and for air. And a lot of times, a lot of the porosity is made by earthworms. That is a very good thing if you dig down into your soil and you find a lot of earthworms, that you're heading in the right direction as far as soil building. Soil building is many things though. It's not one size fits all. It is not do this and your soil's going to be perfect. That's one of the biggest misunderstandings or lies about these type of systems is you're going to take soil that it's rocks and clay and just really hard to deal with soil, and you're going to turn it into black dirt of Northern Illinois. No, you're not. That's not in your cards. That's not the cards that were dealt to you, and that's not going to happen simply by trying to do soil building. What we're doing by trying to do soil building is we're trying to get our soil to a place where we can raise any food plot that we want and supply all the nutrients that we can to those whitetails. So for many parts of the country, soil building is a great thing to do, but it's not necessarily a have to do. Okay, and I hope we can kind of differentiate those two. There are places in the country where we are forced to soil build. We have solid sand, we have extreme amounts of hard clay. Those areas can be very difficult to raise food plots in because they are one of the soil properties, where good soil is considered a mix of all three of the sand, silt, and clay. Okay, if you only have one, typically, like say sand, you have really good drainage. Sand lets water through awesome, but on the negative side, it doesn't hold moisture very well. Clay is exactly the opposite. Clay holds moisture very well, but that's also its negative at times. It holds too much moisture. A lot of times you see those ponding effects in those clayey type soils. Let's get into what we can do if we want to better our soil quality. A couple key ingredients to this is, like I said, no-till. That is a very important. We don't want to disturb the soil structure any more than what we absolutely have to. So if you are doing a hardcore soil building, a no-till drill is pretty much a must. It is very difficult to do much soil building without a no-till drill because you're having to work that soil to expose it to be able to get that seed to soil contact to start the next generation. A lot of the things that we're trying to do with soil building is we're trying to keep a living plant on this soil, covering the soil every single day of the year. That is one of the biggest things. It's called a cover crop. We are constantly raising high organic matter crops, and we are keeping them growing year round. So that means we're going to plant a spring summer type blend that is going to keep a lot of organic matter on the soil. And then as we transition into those fall and winter months, as the temperatures start getting cooler, those crops are going to play out, and then we must transition into a different crop so that we can keep that living plant on top of that soil at all times. That is why you see buckwheat and cereal rye being used so much in soil building. Buckwheat is extremely fast at producing a lot of organic matter. A lot of times you can get 2 to 3 generations of buckwheat on a food plot in 1 year. When you're doing that, you're highly building the soil because all that organic matter from that dead plant is breaking down. It's incorporating that into the soil. All those nutrients are going back into the soil, and it's also covering the soil, which is really good if you're in those areas with limited topsoil. Reason for that is the sun's not beating down on it, okay? So it takes it much longer to dry out, and that's a very good environment for those earthworms to be in that really help with that porosity. Some of the things that we can do in the fall and winter months is plant brassicas. Brassicas are phenomenal soil builders, right? Because they put that huge bulb down, and then in the spring it all rots out. You're left with a nice big void. You've got a lot of air space, you've got a lot of water space, and those roots go way down deep. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking at a constant decaying of root systems and being replaced by new plants that will take a hold of the nutrients that are mined from those first plots and start growing again. Okay, so the key ingredient to soil building food plots is to constantly keep the soil covered, never exposing the soil. That is 100% key in this game, as well as the no tillage, as well as planting a food plot that produces a lot of organic matter. Something like soybeans is not really a super good soil builder. Why? It draws high levels of P and K out of the soil, and there's limited organic matter left on top of the soil. So something like cereal rye that's going to get neck high by the springtime, that's producing a significant amount of organic matter on top of that soil. Not only do you get the benefits of that plant breaking down, you also get the benefit of weed suppression from that cereal rye. So if you knock cereal rye down, or even if you leave it standing, spray it and kill it, you're still going to get a significant amount of weed suppression just because how thick that cereal rye is. We're looking at 50 to 60 pounds per acre when we plant that cereal rye. That's a significant amount of plants out there per acre. So in most parts of the country, you can get on your local soil maps and you can look up what your soil type is and what the advantages of your soil types are, what are the disadvantages of your soil types. And oftentimes we can split the middle. We can do some soil building. We can also raise some food plots that are beneficial to those whitetails, that are preferred for those whitetails if we figure out the strengths and the weaknesses. This area here is highly fertile river bottom soil. Okay, it's deep, it's dark. We can produce pretty much any plot down here that we need to, so long as it doesn't have issues with high water, because at times down here in the river bottom, we have issues with high water. When the river floods, this will all be underwater. So something like alfalfa, not going to do well down here. Something like chestnut trees, not going to do well down here. But for something like corn, soybeans, cereal rye in the fall, annual clovers, all those do fairly well down here. So it's about, in my opinion, soil building is a kind of a give and take. We're trying to do the best we can with what we have, yet still plant the most preferred food source that we possibly can with what we have as far as our soil goes. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Y'all smash that like and subscribe button.